This is a record of Ralph. Service record of Ralph M. Murray. I enlisted in Company A, 8th Infantry, in Cambridge, Mass. on July 5th, 1917. Our regiment was sent to Linfield, Mass. for training in infantry drill. From there we were sent to Westfield, Mass., where we merged with the 6th and 2nd Regiments to become the 104th Infantry. We became the Yankee Division, called the 26th. Here we built roads and lived in squad tents of 8 men. From here, after basic training, we left for Montreal by train with the blinds down so nobody could see us leaving. We arrived in Montreal, Canada, and boarded the ship Scotian. We left for Halifax, Nova Scotia early that morning and arrived 3 days later. After 5 days, a convoy of 9 ships sailed without escort for England. The trip over the ocean was very rough. Many of the men were seasick. 2 days from land, 6 destroyers conveyed us through the submarine zone. We arrived at Liverpool and we boarded a train for Southampton. Stayed there for 5 days. Then we sailed across the English Channel for Le Havre in France. Here we were a couple of days. Then we left for our training area. We boarded boxcars that held 40 men or 8 horses. 2 days later, arrived at our destination. The first battle, which was mine, was stationed in Sartz, 2nd Pompier, 3rd Harriville. Our basics started. We took lessons in automatic rifle fire, bayonet drill, gas mask, and grenade throwing, besides rifle grenades fire. We were trained by a Blue Devil outfit, the French Army, 151st Infantry Regiment. They were nearly wiped out and were resting from their last tour of duty. We spent our first Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's drilling. We had corn, bill, and hardtack for our meals. They were lonely days. We went up in the hills to practice with weapons, and it was cold, icy, walking from snow melting when our feet and hands were cold. The YMCA had a hut, and we would go there in the evening to write letters home. I did not receive any mail from home for quite a while before I left for the front lines. There was a piano at the Y. Some of the boys could play by ear, and we could dance with one another. There were no girls in the town. They were in the ammunition factories. The old people and children were the only ones left. It was here we were issued our serial numbers. Mine, 71,101. I took out $10,000 insurance and were given a French gas mask, later an Englishman, which was much better. On February the 2nd, we left for the Aisne-Marne front. We went by boxcars. This was our first defense sector. We went through the city of Soissons. This place was totally destroyed by shell fire, and there were no houses standing. Everything was wrecked. All around the villages, they were blown up. The trenches were all smashed, and we had to repair them, always under shell fire. From here we went to the Chemdy Downs front. Here there were some canals. My rifle team, of which I was first loader, which I had a first loader, one to carry half-round clips of 30 shots. A rifleman whose job was to protect us while we were in action. He had a Springfield rifle with a bayonet and a trombone attachment for firing rifle grenades at any angle from the Springfield. The grenade would explode from 15 to 100 yards according to the angle before they hit the ground, and could do a lot of damage. This was shrapnel. All right. I carried a gas mask and a .45 caliber pistol. I was a first-class private and in charge of the team. The corporal had the other team. There were 8 men in the squad and in the 4th platoon. My team was placed under a railroad embankment in front, covered with chicken wire and leaves to camouflage us from the enemy. The first time the shell came over to us with a whine and landed about 50 feet behind us. We sure were scared and let anyone say they wasn't. They are full of baloney. We were always on the watch from dawn to dusk, and the and there are 250 men composed of 4 platoons, a captain, first lieutenant, 4 second lieutenants. We were always under shell fire every day, and sometimes at night. One night when I was on watch, my sergeant told me to report to my captain. He told me to take my rifle team with a French sergeant who brought me through the woods to a trench with a company of French soldiers, the 119th French Infantry. There was a French lieutenant had me place my rifle team about 50 yards in front of their company. They put a machine gun on the right flank, gave me the field of fire, all this under heavy fire. If the German attack had came our way, we'd have been killed, all killed. They went over to B Company, 101st Regiment. They were driven off, several killed, and some prisoners taken. At dawn, we went back to my company. The French sergeant told my captain that his lieutenant, that he had recommended me for coolness under fire, the Croix de Guerre. My captain was removed command of the company and did not send the application into headquarters, and I lost out. About the 20th of March, we left for our second front. It was called the Toul sector, where we relieved the 1st Division, all right? Who also lost the first men killed in action. Our company was in front of Mount Sec. Here the Germans had the range with their artillery over this sector. The French is muddy and full of water, where they're duck boards, and if you stepped off one of them, you'd go up to your knees in water. Dead Men's Curve, through which most of our supplies had to come by this road. Our food and water were shelled, and some were killed and wounded. Trucks were blown up. There was a town called the Town of Horrors. My rifle team was in the graveyard, and it was dark and creepy. We were there for 2 weeks. Was very glad to be relieved. The name of the town was Voxillen. It was destroyed so bad that only the dead were left. On April 11th and 12th, we were attacked by the Prussian Guard, and the regiment was sent into action. It was some battle, and we lost some men killed and wounded, but they were driven off with severe losses and prisoners taken. This battle was called Appamont Woods, and the village of Seaspray took the brunt of the fighting. It was later when we were relieved by the 82nd Division on the last of April. We hiked back to a rest camp with the Laos and marched to a town called Book. It was a foggy Sunday morning, and we lined up in company front. We were decorated by General Pasaga with the Croix de Guerre for our colors, and the regiment with the right to wear the fourragère on our left shoulder. The 1st American Regiment is decorated by any foreign country. General Pasaga was very proud of the way our regiment did in action. After 3 weeks in the rest camp, we entrained for the Aisne-Marne front. On our way, we could see the Eiffel Tower, and we thought we were going to parade in Paris on the 4th of July. But we were disappointed. Instead, we got off the boxcars at a town called La Ferte, where we marched a couple of miles, made a left turn in the woods. This was called Bella Woods. The Marines and 9th and 23rd Infantry had driven the Germans back and mopped it up. Our regiment relieved them. We were shelled as we took over from them, and we ducked for cover. They were half-round iron shelters which protected us from shrapnel. We relieved the 2nd Division, the 9th, 23rd Infantry, and the 5th and 6th Marines. Our regiment took over the sector held by the 5th. In my squad, which was the 4th platoon, there were 2 men left, and both were wounded. They gave us the field of fire. We were in the gully, and there were dead Marines and soldiers laying around us. They could not be buried because it was dangerous and to show yourself, and they sure did stink like the devil. It was the night before the 4th, and the artillery sent over a heavy barrage, and they were sure pace of the Germans. We stayed here until July 20th, and on that afternoon at 3 o'clock, the temperature of 92 degrees, we went over the top. The wheat fields were hot, dusty. The stalks were up to our stomachs. It was in the rear wave. I was in the rear wave. The Germans up with a heavy machine gun for artillery and gas shells. 2 men in front of me were blown up to bits. Nothing was found of them later. I went through the smoke. We were going across the railroad tracks near the town of Brucey. I was firing from the hip of my automatic rifle as fast as my first loader could feed the clips to my rifle. We were charging the machine gun position when my gun was knocked out of my hand, and I was hit in the right knee, and I received a flesh wound above my left knee. My canteen was shut off the hip. I fell and lay there, and a buddy by the name of Bates came along, asked if I was all right. I said if he would help me, I would try to walk. He was wounded with a shrapnel shiver in his ankle. He helped me to a shell hole until the first aid man came. I had bandaged my wounds. The first aid man put a tag which says degree undetermined. I had a compound fracture of my right leg. The bullet went right in my right leg and down to the lower part of my leg just above the ankle. The bone was sticking out, and I had a black and blue lump there. All the men in the squad were wounded, some of us severe. There was a dozen men of the 250 to reach the objective. The rest were either killed or wounded. All the company of the regiment were hit hard. Late in the evening, I was carried on a stretcher through the woods for a half a mile to first aid, given a tetanus shot in the stomach, and I lay there until we were evacuated. I was in terrible pain. I didn't know what happened to my brother Chester, who was a runner for Ralph Robart, lieutenant, carrying messages, and I found out later that he had been wounded in the leg. I did not see him until arriving home 16 months later on a furlough. After 2 days on a hospital train with a red cross painted on the sides and the cars all white, we arrived at Contrexyville. I saw none of my buddies here, and it was lonesome. I was operated that night, and when I was brought here, my leg was twisted in the shape of the figure 4. Major Mumford of John Hopkins Unit of Baltimore. He was a bone specialist and said I was lucky I did not lose my leg. After 2 weeks in September, he had an Army photographer take pictures of my leg in different positions. He said my case was going to his hospital for students to study. I was sent to Base 6 at Bordeaux, then to St. Agnon, a classification camp where you had to wiggle our fingers and toes. Here we formed prisoner of war companies composed of 84 men, led with a captain, lieutenant, medical officer, doctor, plus a medical sergeant. We had 450 German prisoners. After a month, we left for a place called Sully in the Argonne. The prisoners were sent to us. Our company was called the 55th PWE Headquarters Company, Army Service Corps. After the armistice, we sent to Avocourt, which was our camp. Here we rode in trucks to Mount Faucon, built roads, buried some soldiers we were missed by the burial detail. We worked under the 23rd Engineers, blew up shells and ammunition. From here we traveled to Neuchateau, Bourg, Langres, Ishtil, all the time working to the coast. I was promoted to corporal, later to sergeant first class. I made the two trips to Germany, returning prisoners to Koblenz. These Russian, Poles, Lithuanians, Czechs, Bulgars, who were in Germany and were drafted in wartime. At tours, I went to the hospital as my leg was bothering me. It was at breast 33. This was in the end of September. 2 weeks, went on board the U.S. Agamemnon, sailed, and all right, and sailed for New York. From there to Camp Fox in New York State. It took us 10 days to reach home. The sea was rough. I sent a telegram home that I was feeling fine. After 2 days, was sent to Fort McHenry in Baltimore, Maryland, and I received a month's furlough. My mother and father were glad to see me, also my brothers. I was walking with a cane. I was glad to be home after 2 years in France. One night I went with my brother to the Knights of Columbus and was introduced to a girl who belonged to the Daughters of Isabella, who sat down with me and we talked about different things in general. Her name was Mary W. Herney, who later became my wife. After my leave was up, I went back to the hospital and asked the doctor of my ward for a discharge. On 26th of November 1919, I received a disabled veteran's discharge. I was sent to Camp Dix, New Jersey, with a list of 20 men and transportation for discharge of these men. I was discharged on the day before Thanksgiving and came home. Discharged from the 55th PWE Army Service Corps, having prisoners of war, Sergeant Serial 71,101. Medals for combat, 5 Bronze Stars for defense, Aisne-Marne, Campagne-Marne, Saint-Mihiel, and Argonne. The Croix de Guerre Fourragère for my left shoulder, also a Purple Heart. Also, 2 or 3 medals from France, the Ainsmont, Champagne-Mont, Saint Mihiel. I have the French Verdun. Ralph M. Murray and Mary W. Murray Herney were married October the 9th, 1922. We were blessed with four girls.